Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back yet again to UFC Roundup. I'm Paul Felder. I'm, of course, with Michael Chiesa. We have a lot to talk about. We've got a big pay-per-view.
Whoa. Paul, hey, hold on, time out. Look, I know we got a lot of talked about, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I got to say, before we get into 263 and unpacking some of the fights from this last weekend, we got to talk about Paul Felder right now. Paul, it's been an exciting couple of weeks since the last time we came on the show. A lot's happened in your life.
Yep.
You had your first triathlon. On top of that, your freshly minted new embarkment into retirement. Paul, talk to me for a second. Tell me about what's transpired in the last few weeks.
It's been a couple weeks, hasn't it? It's been pretty crazy. As you can see, I'm wearing a nice, comfy, smoking sweater down here in my basement, enjoying retirement. There's beers in the fridge. There's whiskey upstairs. Just missing some cigars, Michael, and I think I'd be ready. But yeah, man, you know me, and we've talked on the road and on the side and during this podcast and rehearsals and stuff that I just lost a little bit of that fire. I feel like it wasn't going to quite be the champion anytime soon, and I figured let me walk away while I still feel fresh physically, mentally, focus on commentary, focus on acting, focus on this triathlon passion that I've become obsessed with, which was a nervous thing for me because I had never done one, right? So finally this weekend down in Roanoke, Virginia, I got to finally compete in my first 70.3 half Ironman. And let me tell you, man, holy crap, I can't wait to do one again. That was one of the biggest rushes, and that's what I've been looking for, right? Is something that's going to put that competitive spark back in me, and that race really did it. It was the most physically exhausting thing I've ever done in my entire life, and that includes 2 5-round fights with 2 of the baddest dudes in the lightweight division. This was by far the worst thing I've ever felt as far as exhaustion. Now, we're not talking punches to the face, kicks to the legs. Physically, I felt much worse, but I'm happy with how I went. I got 23rd in my age group and like 130th something, 133, I believe, out of 1,500 and some people, and a lot of people didn't even complete it. That's how hard this course was. The bike portion was madness.
Now, well, make sure to elaborate to us, Paul, because you're saying it lit some of that competitive spark again. Yeah. Make sure to clarify that it's not lighting that competitive spark to get you back in the octagon, because you know me, Paul. I love a good Irish Dragon fight.
Yeah, No, definitely it is a nice replacement, right? Because I'm a competitive guy. I like to be physically active. I'm never going to be one of those people that's just like, oh, I'm retired, I'm going to sit on the couch and enjoy my life. That I'm probably going to do something like triathlon or something like it until the day I die, until my legs literally won't allow me to walk anymore. So now it's a battle within myself. I finished in 5:26, and I wanted to do it in 5 hours or less. And the bike course really prevented me from doing that. I also swam with the wrong group off the bat. I was supposed to be swimming with like the 35-minute finishers. I ended up with the 40-something. So I was running into a lot of butts and legs out in that reservoir trying to get past. But I had a good swim. I had a really good bike. It was all uphill, basically. I mean, I was hitting over 40 miles an hour on those descents too, going down that mountain. So it was talk about a rush. Some dudes were wiping out. There was people walking their bikes up the mountain. I'm very disappointed in my run. I've been running like 7 30-minute miles for 10 to 12 mile runs, and I didn't even come close to that on race day.
Well, hopefully with you running into butts during that swim, you didn't catch a case of pink eye. But look, we
had wetsuits on. We had wetsuits on, so it was safe.
So let's get to UFC 263, Paul. Yeah. We got a lot of big fights, 2 title fights. We got the 5-round Nate Diaz, Leon Edwards fight. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, 2 rematches. Right. Obviously, Marvin Vettori and Israel Adesanya are going back at it. They had 3 rounds to do it before. It was a split decision before. Marvin was able to use his wrestling to kind of stifle that striking of Israel Adesanya, even though they had moments on the feet. Interesting. But even more interesting is obviously in this co-main event in the flyweights, because those 2 dudes absolutely went at it. Point deductions happened. Close fight, back and forth. I think it was the most significant strikes thrown in a flyweight fight, or maybe in a fight ever between those 2 guys. It was madness. And then to top it off, we've got Diaz taking on Leon Edwards. And these guys, they got their 5 rounds. It's not even a main event. It's not even a co-main event, but we're still getting 3 5-round fights. And that doesn't even scratch the surface. There's so many other fights on that main card. on the prelims. We've got Bilal Muhammad on there. You've got Damian Maia, who's an absolute legend. There's some other lightweights that are stacking this card. So let's just start with this main event, right? We'll start off the top. Very close first fight. Marvin believes he still won that fight. If you watch their little interview with Bisping, these guys do not like each other. They've been going back and forth. So what are your thoughts on what the rematch is going to bring? What's going to be different in your mind, Michael? What changes do you think will be made, especially on the side of Vettori, right? Because technically he did lose the fight, whether he wants to think that or not.
I think the change that will be made is I think Vettori's going to go to his wrestling a lot earlier. If you see in his fight against Jack Hermanson, and if you see in his fight, particularly the fight with Kevin Holland, I mean, that was a wrestling heavy attack, and he feels that that's where he beat Israel Adesanya in the first fight, was with the wrestling. That was what made him, in his mind, break away and win that first fight. So I think we're going to see more of a wrestling heavy attack from Marvin Vettori. And I just think his confidence is a lot higher. You see how close that first fight was, and we've seen Israel Adesanya from that fight going forward, just catapulted to the top of the middleweight division, won a lot of big fights, and he did it with style points. No pun intended, hence the style bender. But I think confidence in wrestling on the side of Vettori, I think that's going to be what's different in this fight. He's always been a confident guy, but I think that going back to that first fight, knowing how well he did and seeing where others have failed in the middleweight division, I think that he's going to get an extra sense of confidence. And you couple that with Israel's last fight against Jan Blachowicz. I mean, the only area he really got beat in that fight, which led to him losing, was the wrestling. So I think you pair that with those two components, with his confidence in the wrestling heavy attack and the Holland fight. I think you put all three of those together, and I think that that's where we're going to see Marvin Vettori try to approach this fight.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think the wrestling is going to come out of that bag really quick. And I think, of course, as you said, seeing what Jan Blachowicz was able to do with it is going to give him a big boost of confidence. And we also now have 5 rounds instead of 3 rounds. Who do you think that favors more, right? Obviously, Vettori has had a couple of fights now where he's had to go long distances, really grueling fights, grind things out. So this is what he's been doing building up to this fight. When you're fighting for a championship, in my opinion, it's good to kind of get some dress rehearsals. And he's had those. He's had to dig deep. He's been exhausted in those 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds, and he's found a way to win. So in my opinion, I'm going to go first here, Michael. Okay, thank you. I think that it's going to favor Vettori in this one. I think because he's such a grinder, he's such a wrestler. Now that he's got more time to do that, he can still lose rounds early. He can get hurt with something, but if he can just get on the hips, get the legs of Adesanya, get him down and flatten him out and keep him there and wear on him, he's been there before. He's comfortable there, and he's going to, I think, really take advantage of those 5 rounds.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you there. I mean, Israel's shown in the past he has the conditioning to go 5 rounds, but even Marvin said it himself since that first fight. He's hired a nutritionist, he's hired a new strength conditioning coach, and that's been a big point of emphasis for him. If you go look on his social media pages, the guy's an absolute animal on a Versa climber. This guy, I agree with you. I think that he's going to be able to weather the storm. I mean, all jokes aside, if you've ever seen Marvin Vettori's head, the guy has a big old Italian melon. I mean, that thing is like a big old cannelloni. I mean, he can take a shot. You know what I mean? And he's a well-built middleweight. Yeah. And, he, like I said, going into this fight, I feel like he dotted his I's. He crossed his T's. I think he's going to be very well prepared to have a grueling 5-round fight. And I think Israel's in for a tough match. It's hard for me to pick a winner in this fight, Paul. I know that you're calling the fight, so you have to sit this one out. But for me, if I had to make a prediction, it's a coin flip to me. I think this fight's a lot closer than people think. It's hard for me to pick against one of these guys because Israel, him and I, we have the same sponsor, Engage Industries, and I have a little story about him hanging out with my mom at one of my after parties. So it's hard for me to pick against that, even though he's going against my Italian counterpart, my fellow Paisan, Marvin Vettori. I don't got a dog in the fight. I'm just looking forward to being in Arizona and watching it.
Let me ask you one more thing, Michael. Do you think that Jan Blachowicz laid out the blueprint? Do you think it's as cut and dry as that he was able to go in there and wrestle him? Now, let's take into consideration that Marvin is a big middleweight, but Jan is a true 205er. So do you think that what he was able to do to Adesanya, do you think that lays out what other middleweights and in particular Vettori needs to do to get the victory?
That's tough to say, Paul, because of just what you said right there. The fact that Jan Blachowicz is a true 205-pounder, it's hard to say if that is the blueprint. It's like, it's like going back to Kevin Holland. You see Kevin Holland's last 2 fights. It's like, okay, that is the blueprint, but he's going against middleweights and he's down in AK or addressing that. I'm sure we'll talk about that at another time when he gets another fight. But it's hard to say if that's the blueprint or not, given that he fought Jan Blachowicz, who's a very, very true 205er. Like, I'm sure Jan could win fights at heavyweight. I'll take it that far. But it's definitely something to where if you're Marvin Vettori in the way that he fights and the way his style kind of matches up to Jan's, it's something that you, like I said, you can build confidence off that. You wrestled him in the first fight. That's where you feel you won the fight, was through the wrestling. You just saw how he did against Jan Blachowicz. So I don't think we'll know if it's the blueprint after Saturday night. I mean, I think that's the safest way to put it.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, I mean, let's say Vettori does get the win and it's through a lot of wrestling. I think Adesanya is obviously going to have a glaring issue that he's going to have to go and fix. But also the point to be made is since he's fought Blachowicz and he lost that way, trying to become the double champ, I'm pretty sure, knowing the martial artist and the guy that Adesanya is, and probably became pretty damn obsessed with going back to the gym and saying, that ain't ever going to happen to me again. So there's two sides to that coin that fans and everybody at home's got to realize. Yes, he was controlled and taken down and beat up on the ground. And let's give Jan some credit on the feet too. He had some moments on the feet as well. But it was obviously clearly the wrestling that overtook him. But that would make somebody like Adesanya go back to the gym and really work on those things. But let's move on because we've got a co-main event that's also a rematch. These guys absolutely put on a show. The best flyweight fight of all time, I would say, without a doubt. There was some controversy. There's points taken away. There's groin strikes. Everything about this fight sets up just an absolute slugfest between these two guys. Who do you like? Why? And will it be as entertaining, or if there's some things that happened in that first fight that will not happen again in this rematch?
Well, I mean, when you go back to the controversial aspect of that first fight, there was a lot more than just the groin strike. You had Waleed Ismail coming out saying, Figueiredo was in the hospital the night
before. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about as well. Yeah.
Yeah, this was him not at his best, and this was a short notice turnaround for both of these guys. These guys fought it was like a month after their fights before. Yep. They needed a headlining spot for that December 12th card, I believe was the date. And I mean, they did absolutely steal the show. I mean, that was my favorite fight of 2020. I mean, the volume, the output, the high stakes, to me, it was a very dramatic ending. It's like I feel like Brandon Moreno, this is like Rocky 1. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like Davidson's been pegged as this guy that's unbeatable. We saw what he did to Joseph Benavidez and Alex Perez. And then you got Moreno, who's this guy that got cut, got brought back in, a guy that probably not many people picked to even last a couple rounds with the champion.
Yeah.
And he goes out there and has this awesome fight and it ends in a draw and the belt goes back to Davidson. I'm like, this is like Rocky 1 playing out in the octagon. And it was just so great. There's no way that this fight isn't going to be like the one before. Is it going to be as exciting, if not better? I can't say it is or not, but I will say it's going to be a fun fight. I've seen Brandon Moreno around the UFC Performance Institute. He looks to be in phenomenal shape. He looks to be in high spirits. I caught him during a strength conditioning workout, seeing what he's doing, and I can tell that this man is very prepared for this fight, and I'm sure it's the same thing for the champion. I do have a dog in this fight. I do have somebody I'm picking. And I am going with Brandon Moreno. I think that I just think that the amount of adversity that he's overcome to get back into that title fight the first time, it's just a great story. I mean, to get cut, have to go back to the regional circuit, which, look, he fought for the LFA flyweight title. And for people watching the show that don't know what LFA is, that's the number one feeder promotion leading into the UFC. We see a lot of people that win the titles in LFA and win main events there, they get signed to the UFC.
Yeah.
That's a tough regional circuit to get re-signed on because you're fighting the best prospects in the world. So his road back to the UFC was not easy. So, I just think that just that alone, his path to get to where he is now, I think that that's going to be one of the difference makers in this fight.
Well, my next question was going to be, which of these dogs do you think has the better chance? And you answered it right there. So you think that of these guys, the underdogs and the guys challenging again, you think Moreno's got the much better chance to win the championship over Vettori?
Yeah, I do think so. You know, like I said, I can't pick in the Izzy Vettori fight. That one's just too hard for me. Like, if you had a gun to my head, I would say I hope there's not a bullet in the chamber because I'm not going to pick. I'm going to sit that one out. But when it comes to Moreno and Davidson, and I'm not taking anything away from Davidson, I think he's a phenomenal champion. I think he's one of the most dominant guys in flyweight. We've seen, you know, we saw Demetrius' great title reign, but we didn't see Demetrius put people away in the way that Davidson did. So
yeah.
But I just think Moreno's he's got it, man. He's got the toughness. He's got the grit. He's got the style. I mean, it's speed versus power here. I mean, Moreno's really good with the combinations. He's good at fighting inside. He showed that, you know, for the people back home, if you've ever seen Davidson Figueiredo, he pound for pound might have the biggest head in the UFC. I mean, the guy's got a dome on him. And he could take a good punch. And you see Moreno, and he's a decent-sized flyweight, but I was so surprised at how well he was able to eat the power shots of Davidson Figueiredo. And I'm siding with Moreno, you know, and that comes from an analytical standpoint, as well as a little bit of recency, a little bit of bias in the sense that, you know, I've got to work with the guy.
You've seen him, bro. You've seen him. So that counts for something, right? That's inside info. A lot of times people don't have that opportunity to see these guys training, to see them in the gym. So to be able to physically see him like you did, that tells us a lot, right? Because you're not just guessing based on prior performances or what he's capable of. You're basing a lot of this on, hey, man, I've seen this guy. He's taking it serious. You know where he's been on the regional scene to get there. And I agree with you. When you get cut, you've got to go back outside of the UFC. Talk about soul crushing, right? To then dig deep, fight your way not only out of that, back into the organization, then to go on the win streak, to then get the title fight, make it as close as it was, and a draw, and then you get the rematch. The kid's got heart for sure. For sure. I like that about him a lot. Obviously, I can't pick a winner in this fight. I'll be calling the fights next Saturday or this Saturday. But again, I got to say, Davidson Figueiredo, I don't know, man. He is one of the scariest guys on the roster in any weight class. Pound for pound, that guy is mean. He is a fighter's fighter. He goes out there. Maybe sometimes it's not the cleanest fight, but that just shows me that he's gritty, he's nasty, and he's out there to hurt you. And he scares me against anybody in that division, to be honest.
Well, I mean, when you have the power that he does and the size, you could be a little sloppier. Look, we could talk flyweights all day. We could talk this fight all day, but the people's main event, I have this pegged as the people's main event because we all know the following that Nate Diaz has. I mean, arguably he has the biggest following out of anybody on the card, and that's even going up against Israel Adesanya. I mean, it's like the West Coast cult following of Nate Diaz that has spread globally. We got Nate Diaz versus Leon Edwards, Paul, for 5 rounds. The first time ever in the company's history that we have a 5-round non-main event. I mean, what a great fight. Yeah.
Non-main event, non-co-main event. I mean, there's no reason it should be 5 rounds other than we want it to be 5 rounds. Nate wants it to be 5 rounds. I'm sure Leon has no problems with it being 5 rounds. I love that. I think that this fight is amazing. I like that Leon took this fight. Even though Nate is not up in the rankings right now, he's not the guy that you're going to beat, and that technically should get you that title fight. But anytime you're in there with Nate Diaz, you have eyeballs on you. People love to see what's going on, and you can take all of that steam, put it right on yourself, and then move your career forward. That's what you get when you get a Diaz fight. It's crazy to see where he has come, right? He's always had that underground cult-like following, but ever since the McGregor fights and how he's handled himself and how he waits for what he wants and makes sure that he gets the opportunities that he wants in this organization. I mean, Nate calls shots now, man. He went from being that, hey, Conor McGregor, you're taking everything I worked for, to being the guy right now in the organization who just sits and waits until the things are just right for him. And I think that in this fight, we talked a little bit about who has more to lose here. And I think for me, it's clear as day that it's Leon who has more to lose here. He's really the proper contender in this fight. He's the guy that really could go on, right, and challenge for the title, and it would be justified. Whereas Nate, he would have a little work to do other than him just having so much star power and hype behind him. If Nate loses a fight, we don't really care. It's going to be bloody. It's going to be awesome. And we're going to tune back in and buy the next pay-per-view that he's a part of. But for Leon, this is his chance to shut up all the doubters, all the haters. He's had a lot of controversy, a lot of injuries, illnesses, the freak eye poke stuff with Bilal Muhammad. So now he is so very, very desperate to go out there, not only win, but perform. Am I right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you couldn't have said it any better, Paul. I think that when you look at who has more to gain and more to lose in this fight, who's the pressure on? I think that's the best way to say, like, who is the pressure? Who's the pressure on in this fight? It's got to be Leon, because I have a ton of respect for Nate. He's one of my friends. He has nothing to lose this fight. I mean, for one, Nate's always he's there to win. He's not there to show up and collect the paycheck. He wants to win this fight,
Yeah.
And we could go on and on about the possibilities of what you can do with Nate Diaz on a win or a loss. But when it comes to Leon Edwards, that's not the same case. It's obvious if Leon wins, we know what direction we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk him in the title. But if he loses to Nate, you're talking about he's gonna fall way down the ladder. Maybe not in terms of the rankings, but in terms of the push. This is his opportunity from the company to get the push. And it's also paired with the fact that Nate Diaz wants this fight. Nate Diaz, he is in a position where he can kind of pick his fights. He wants to fight. It's not necessarily the fights that suit his style the best. It's just the ones that he just likes to fight. Look at the guys that he wants to fight. He wants to fight Anthony Pettis, Conor McGregor, Jorge Masvidal, Leon Edwards. Like, he wants to fight fighters. But I just feel like that there's a lot to lose for Leon Edwards here. I feel like he has to do more than win. I feel like he's either really, really got to thump Nate, or he's got to put him away. I feel like if it's a close 5-round fight, I feel like it wouldn't really benefit him as much as one would think. So there's a lot of pressure on Leon Edwards to perform in this fight. But it's going to be interesting, man. It's anytime Nate Diaz is in a fight, you're in for a treat. The fans are in for a treat. Just everybody that's a part of it is just in for a great fight. And I think Nate could really bring out some of the dog in Leon Edwards. We've seen Leon has very clean performances. When Leon wins, it's very clean. It's very one-sided. I think Nate technical. Nate has the ability to make it a dogfight with anybody. And I think that Nate could bring out the dog in Leon Edwards, and I'm really excited to see what that looks like, because that could be nasty.
That's such a good point, because Leon is so clean. His stand-up is so sharp. But you're right. Nate doesn't fight that way. Nate's got great boxing, great jiu-jitsu, but he makes it a damn scrap. He's in your face. He might not even be winning the exchanges, but he is on you. And I'm also in agreement. I would love to see that happen in this fight, because I want to see Leon get pushed like that and have to dig in there and pull out that fighter, because it's in him, man. Anytime you talk to him and you just see him, there's been a lot that's happened to him, and I know he is hurting to really go out there and punch somebody in the face. So I'm very excited to see Leon get pushed up against that fence from crazy Nate Diaz, who's got cardio for days, and bring out that dog in Edwards. And I think it's going to happen. I think we're in for a spectacular fight between those two. But we've got other amazing fights on this card. I'm going to ask you, what's one other fight, and then I'll say mine. What's one other fight on this card amongst many that we could talk about? But let's pick at least one that you really think stands out on this card.
Oh, man. I mean, it's a no-brainer for me. Drew Dober versus Brad Riddell. I think that fight's going to be insane. I mean, look, there's no secret behind what these guys like to do. You know what I mean? Drew Dober loves to go out there and bang, and so does Brad Riddell. And Brad Riddell's a guy, he's been a Muay Thai coach for a long time. I've seen him coaching Alexander Volkanovski at the PI before. I've seen him. He's always kind of the guy helping his teammates, but now he's the guy that's competing with his teammates. And you got Drew Dober, who's just on a side note, Drew Dober's got the biggest legs in the UFC. I mean, the guy's got tree trunks for thighs, and he knows how to use them. Powerful kicks, great stance, tricky southpaw. That fight's going to be amazing. I mean, there's no way. As much as we just talked about how potentially fun Nate Diaz and Leon Edwards could be, I still think that Brad Riddell and Drew Dober is going to be fight of the night. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I love that fight. That's another one that clearly stood out to me. Another one, obviously, I got to shout out my man, my boy, Bilal Muhammad, who's on the card, fighting an absolute legend in Damian Maia. This is huge for Bilal. And it's an opportunity for Damian Maia to go out there and show, listen, I can still hang with these young guns. I can still beat these guys who think that they're future contenders and future champions. So love that fight. Also, we got to mention Calderwood and Murphy. I mean, this is a potential next challenger for the belt at women's flyweight. So another great fight on that card. And that's another one where these are two women that you know what they're going to do when they go out there. They are not afraid to go out there and have an absolute stand-up kickboxing, boxing dogfight. I think Calderwood's great in the clinch. Murphy loves to throw hands. It's going to be just a beautiful set of violence out there. And there's just so many other fights. We could sit here and talk that all day, but we must move on. What are we moving on to, Michael?
We're talking last weekend, Paul. We're talking Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Augusto Sakai. You were racing. You were out doing. You were preparing for the triathlon. But what a great heavyweight main event. Rozenstruik had to go out there. We all know about the Cyril Gane fight, and it's something we'd all would like to forget. Rozenstruik had to go out there performing. He did all that and then some. I actually had Augusto Sakai pegged to win that fight. I thought he would hang on him in the clinch and crash the space. And just from the opening onset, Jairzinho Rozenstruik was on his front foot. He was walking him down, and he put together a beautiful 4-piece combination and finished the fight with 1 second left in the first round. So immediately we can forget about the Cyril Gane fight. I feel like we're seeing the Jairzinho Rozenstruik of old, the Jairzinho Rozenstruik that came into the UFC and had 2 knockouts in less than 30 seconds in his first 2 UFC fights. So I feel like we're seeing the Rozenstruik of old, but it was just a sensational performance.
Yeah, and speaking of heavyweights, what about Marcin Tybura, who's on an absolute just murderous streak right now? And we were talking about strength of opponent, right? Now, this guy, I think it's five-fight winning streak for Marcin Tybura at this point, which is massive, but yet still floating under the radar. And I think the reason we got to do that is we got to talk about, well, who has he beaten in those 5 fights? Which, first of all, we got to start with, that's not easy to do. I don't care who you're fighting. And if they're in the UFC, they're heavyweights, and you're throwing those gloves around, there's a chance you can lose on any given Sunday out there in the octagon. So to be on a 5-fight winning streak is impressive no matter what. But where does he go from here? What does he deserve? And maybe who's next and what should he get?
Well, to put it in perspective, if you win 1 fight in the UFC, you're good. If you win 2 in a row, you're really good. If you win 3 in a row, you're elite. And if you go beyond that, that shows you're a contender. Tybura, he's flown under the radar, but if you look at some of the guys he came up short against, the Fabricio Verdums and guys of that sort, like, it was too soon. He's fairly young for a heavyweight. So, his strength of schedule within this 5-fight win streak hasn't been the best, but let's look at his last 2 fights. He put away Greg Hardy, who's a huge, durable heavyweight, and then Walt Harris. And Walt Harris at one point in time was on a 5-fight win streak himself at heavyweight. So for him to go out and dispatch Walt in the way he did, I think that shows that this guy deserves a crack at guys that are closer to the top of the heap. And as well as I do, Paul, historically, the heavyweight divisions kind of had the same mix of guys within the top 8, top 7. Yeah. So this, I think, just right off the top of my head, give the guy Curtis Blades. I mean, I think that's a fight that makes sense. Give him Curtis Blades. Blades doesn't have a fight. He's kind of on the bottom of the top 5, and let's see what Tybura's got. And he's been working a lot on his wrestling, a lot on his grappling, and maybe I'm not going to say he's going to out wrestle Curtis Blades, but maybe he could give him some problems in the department that Curtis Blades is so strong at. So there's a lot of things you could do with Marcin Tybura, but 5 fights in a row at heavyweight, man, he's a contender. He's a contender. I'll go out on a limb and say he's a contender.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he deserves a top 5, somebody up there. I like that fight because that really will show if you're somebody that deserves to be competing for that belt. If you can get through somebody like Curtis Blades, who's got a knack for wrestling, great ground and pound, and he's somebody who's been on a bit of a skid, right? He needs to get in there and get a win against somebody who is on a win streak. So it's an opportunity really for both guys to kind of prove their worth in the heavyweight division. And another performance that stands out from Saturday, I think, is Ponzinibbio, right? Who has had so many issues. 3 years he hadn't fought. Then he comes back, and obviously the fight that he comes back on does not go his way. So very, very in need of going out and having a performance. What do you think about him?
Oh my gosh! I mean, look, from the early onset of the fight, it was all Baeza. I mean, we're going back to the calf kicks, Paul. Yeah. Baeza is so good when he's fighting a right-handed fighter. he does really good with the calf kicks. When he's going against a southpaw, he's all about attacking the head and the body. Well, Ponzi's he's a righty, so right away Baez is chopping that lead leg. And you can see in the fight that, and I got to say this right because I got a lot of flack, Ponzinibbio. I have a problem with saying Ponzinibbio. It's Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio's leg was starting to kind of give out. He was having problems with it. It looked like he was starting to get kind of that drop foot thing that we saw from Jimmy Crute, from Sean O'Malley. It looked like his leg was starting to give out. And I mean, it was a total first round for Baeza. Ponzinibbio, round 2, starts to find success towards the end of the second round. He's starting to find a home for that jab. Kind of missing with all the rest of his punches, but finding a home for a jab. But you know as well as I do, Paul, when it comes to striking, anything and everything is built around the jab. And he just took off in round 3. Started to put together his combinations, started to walk Baeza down. To me, you could argue that it's a fight of the year contender, but I truly believe at this point where we are right now, halfway through 2021, that third round was round of the year. I mean, that third round was insane. It was a great round, great win for Ponzinibbio for everything he's been through. And there was even another standout performance on that card. Manon Farrow, I'm sure I'm saying her name wrong. I'm not the best with French names. It's challenging. But oh my gosh, she came out just like a fire plug from France. Like she just,
so good.
Women throw with volume. That's women fighters are known for throwing with volume. But she doesn't just throw with just volume. It's volume with power. Every single punch, every single strike she threw came out with bad intentions, and she just looked – she's going to be a problem at 125 pounds. And I'm not going to go out on a limb and say, she could give Shevchenko problems right now because we all know how great she is. But she could build herself into that spot and be somebody that could really challenge Valentina down the line. But I mean, her fight was amazing. I mean, I have not seen a female throw with such ferocity and power with volume at 125 pounds. I haven't seen it yet, but I saw it on Saturday. Great performance from her.
Yeah, she's incredible. I got to call her debut on Fight Island, and wow, the striking on that woman is insane. So great to see her go back out there, get another big win. I'm excited to see what matchups come her way. But I think it's time to move on to some questions that we got from the fans. And I don't know if we're going to pull them up or if I'm just going to read them from here. But we'll start at the top here. Pinky F asks, what normally inspires a walkout song, Michael? What normally inspires a walkout song for you?
Man, I don't even know where mine came from, but I will say that I've had the same walkout song since my first amateur fight. My first amateur fight, first week of June. It's actually, wow, now that I think about it, Paul, I didn't even know this before the show until now. Today marks the 13-year anniversary of my very first fight because I started training. My first day of training was Cinco de Mayo 2008, and I fought exactly a month later. So wow. So
congratulations.
Thank you. What a crazy career choice. But I just think that I liked the song, and I think I was starting to get a knack for choking guys in the gym, and I was like, I'm coming out to Stranglehold by Ted Nugent. So different strokes are different folks, Paul. But tell me about yours. I know that Dropkick Murphys. Has this been a staple of the Irish Dragon?
Yeah, it was early on. It was my go-to song for years, and it just got stale for me. So I had to find something else, and then it was kind of more of a fight to fight for me. And it would have to do with something that was either on my playlist or something that I heard in the lyrics in that song that were hitting a nerve with something that was going on in training camp, whether it was, with my dad when he was sick, or something to do with when Aisling was born, or missing home, or, just family stuff. So something in the struggle, like my last fight with RDA, it was more about, being legendary was the song. So like just legendary stuff, going out there and doing some crazy stuff. So for me, it's always been just fight to fight, and what lyrics and what things are going to get me in the mood and the mode that I need to be in for that particular fight. So again, to Pinky F, I think it's different for every single fighter out there. We all have our own inspirations, and some of it's superstition, some of it's mental. It's all different. But moving on, J-Boy G, does a beard actually make a difference in how well you can take a punch It's the first part of this question. And if you could have anybody's beard or facial hair, whose would it be?
Well, off the top of just off the top, I always say people when they ask me the question about does a beard help you with the ability to take a punch? This is my rebuttal. Go tape a bunch of cotton balls to your face and let your friend punch you and tell me how it feels. If it helps, okay. But to me, it doesn't help at all. And on the second part of that question, I like my facial hair the way it is. I'm pretty. There's nobody's. This is the one part of my body that I wouldn't want to trade for anyone else's, Paul. I love my beard. I'm very happy with what I got going from the eyeballs down.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it actually helps. And if I could just for a little bit, I mean, I'm kind of close, but maybe a Tom Selleck mustache for a little bit would be fun to rock around and just pull that Magnum PI look off for a little while. That would be my facial hair of choice.
Well, and the other thing too, Paul, is I feel like a clean shaven face is better for taking a punch because it's a little slicker. Like when you have a beard, it's like more to catch. And even if you don't get hit to a
in amateur boxing, you can't have a beard.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's changed, but I know under certain rule sets, not only could you not have a beard, you couldn't have anything. You had to I've had guys that I trained with who had to shave in the locker room bathroom, the day of their amateur fights to have nothing on their face.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Kadeem Prescott. Should the winner of Riddell versus Dober get Tony Ferguson?
I say give Tony a break, man. I think that, I don't know if that's the best move for Tony right now. I think let's give Tony a break. I think that a lot of guys, I wouldn't be surprised if whoever wins this fight calls him out. I say give Tony a little break. I don't want to see Tony fight any sooner than the end of the year.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one, right? I think Tony needs to take a little break. I don't think he should hang it up. I'm not calling Tony to retire, but I think a little break from being in these battles is a good idea. Recollect yourself, figure out how training camps and things are going to go. But I agree. I think somebody's going to call that name, right? Because he's still a Tom-breaking guy. That's why I pulled myself out. I was like, I'm sick of these.
That's why I was just going to bring that up, Paul.
I'm out of here.
Up, man. That's the one fight I wish I could have saw. The Irish Dragon.
I know. Man. There's a bunch that were left on the table, unfortunately, but that's how it's always going to be, right? I mean, we're always going to have to walk away at some point. I've had plenty of good ones out there. I guess Frago MMA. How much of what you do in the cage is instinctual, and how much of it is planned out? Can I take this one first? I'm going to take this one first. I think that ultimately it's all instinctual, but it's you have to train it to nauseam in the gym so that you don't think about it. So if that's where your question is kind of lying, is how much of it is kind of, oh, we're going to do this right now. And okay, in the fight, you're going to do this. Yes, but you have to just train it and drill it and drill it and drill it so that it does become your instinct. But in there, you're not thinking about what you did in the room 5 weeks ago. It just happens. But that's how your training has to be.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you instill the things within your skill set through training to where they just come out naturally. But I will say I've had moments in fights, Paul, where I've done things I did not train at all.
Oh, yeah.
I pride myself on being a good training partner. Like, I don't like to throw my teammates on their heads or really try to like rip submissions hard. And, like when I fought Colton Smith, I did not train throws in that camp at all. And I threw him on his head, so there's certain things like everything should come instinctively. And then some things will just come out of left field that you're like, where the hell did that come from? It just comes, it just comes comes within the fight. But yeah, definitely instinctive.
I agree. Yeah, there's definitely some madness that happens. And most importantly, our last question, and I want you to really think about this one, Michael. I don't want you to just brush it off. This is serious, and this has to be addressed on this show, okay? Because I know that we're going to get a lot of hate from this, and people are really going to come at us for having such a controversial question on the show. But I'm going to say it anyway, and I apologize to anybody that this might offend out there, okay? KCJ_516 asks, is a hot dog, in your opinion, considered a sandwich?
Fuck. Pardon my language.
I have to censor you now.
I can't say I consider it a sandwich. It's like, You go to Costco, okay? You're checking out at Costco, and you're like, I'm kind of hungry. I'm feeling like a sandwich. And you look at the little cafe they have, okay? There's the hot dog is a hot dog. It's not a sandwich. It's like, I feel like there has to be a break within the bread. It's got to be two pieces put together. And it's got to be like extra things like veggies and things stacked up. Just a tube of meat within a hoagie or just one piece of bread. That's not a sandwich.
See, I mean, I agree that I don't, in my mind, I don't consider a hot dog a sandwich. But here's where I disagree with that theory, because like let's say a hoagie. If I go to a store here in Philly and I order a hoagie or a cheesesteak, a lot of times that roll is not cut in half and put like this. It's split, and then all the stuff is put in there. But let's say I say, hey, I'm going to make a cheese sandwich for my daughter. Okay. That's two things. It's three things if you count it, but so can a hot dog. It's cheese, mayo or mustard, and bread. That's a sandwich. It's only cheese. A hot dog is only a hot dog and maybe mustard or ketchup or relish and whatever. So I agree. It's not a sandwich. But there's no reason on why we don't consider it a sandwich.
Well, I'm about to rebuttal myself, because if you go to Subway and you get a sandwich, see, this question just blows my mind. It's like if you go to Subway where they make Subway sandwiches, it's one piece of bread. They open it up. So I'm like, man,
yeah,
a hot dog is not a sandwich. It just can't be. There's something about it, even though it's defying everything I'm saying. A hot dog is not a freaking sandwich.
Not a sandwich. Me and Michael are in agreement. We don't know why. We don't know how. But a hot dog is not a sandwich. That's it for UFC Roundup. Those are the questions. Guys, please continue. Hashtag UFC Roundup. Comment down below. Get at us on Twitter or Instagram, however you got to do it. Please send us your questions, whether they're serious, funny. We'll try to get you on the show. Fights this Saturday, UFC 263, 2 title fights, 3 5-round fights. Me and Michael will be back next Tuesday to kind of fill you in on what happened and break everything down. So thanks again for joining us here at UFC Roundup. Michael, go ahead.
And don't forget, guys, tune into the UFC weigh-in show. You don't want to miss it. Me and Paul Felder will be on the weigh-in show together. So if you like seeing UFC Roundup, wait till you see us at the weigh-in show. Don't forget to tune in to the weigh-in show.
Tune in. Peace.
Peace.